parents skipped my son's funeral, then demanded his $850,000 trust fund for my sister's wedding. My 6-year-old son, Ethan, died in a car accident on a rainy Thursday afternoon. 3 days later, I stood outside the funeral home watching people arrive as my mother's name flashed across my phone. I almost ignored it, but I answered anyway. Honey, she said, sounding rushed instead of heartbroken. Your father and I are already driving to Nashville. Emily's wedding venue finally had an opening, and the planner couldn't move the appointment. I stared through the funeral home's glass doors. People who had known Ethan from school were quietly taking their seats. My son's small white casket rested beneath a spray of white lilies. His funeral starts in less than an hour, I said. I know, she replied. We'll visit you another day. The call ended. Neither of my parents came. Neither did my younger sister Emily. The funeral passed in a blur of handshakes, whispered condolences, and unbearable silence. My wife, Rachel, barely let go of my hand the entire day. After everyone left, we stood together beside Ethan's grave until sunset, unable to find a reason to walk away. Weeks turned into months. My parents never asked how we were doing. Instead, Mom texted photos of wedding invitations and centerpiece ideas. Dad called once to ask if I still had the guest list from our family reunion because Emily wanted to compare addresses. It was like Ethan had never existed. That wasn't surprising. Growing up, Emily had always been the favorite. When she failed a semester in college, Mom blamed the professors. When I struggled to pay tuition, Dad told me that hardship built character. Emily received a new SUV after graduation. I received a handshake. Years later, my life finally turned around. 2 friends and I built a software company that grew far beyond what we imagined. When we sold it, Rachel and I invested most of the money instead of chasing a bigger lifestyle. After Ethan was born, my grandfather created a trust for him. Rachel and I added to it every year. When Ethan died, life insurance proceeds increased the balance to about $850,000. The trust had one simple instruction. If Ethan died before adulthood without children of his own, every dollar would be donated to a children's hospital. The money was controlled by an independent trustee, not me. I accepted that because it honored everything my grandfather believed in. About 4 months after the funeral, my parents invited us to dinner. Rachel declined. I went alone. Emily sat at the table surrounded by wedding magazines and color samples. Dinner was polite until Mom folded her napkin. We need to talk about Ethan's trust. End quote. I put my fork down. Dad leaned forward. Emily's wedding expenses have gotten out of hand. I waited. You should ask the trustee to transfer the money. I honestly thought he was joking. I don't control the trust. There must be some legal option, Mom said. There isn't. Emily finally spoke. It would stay in the family. I looked at her. The family that skipped Ethan's funeral? Nobody answered. I stood, thanked Mom for dinner, and walked out. A week later, I received a letter from an attorney hired by my parents. They claimed my grandfather had intended for the trust to benefit surviving relatives before any charity. They demanded the transfer be delayed while they challenged the documents. The trustee called me the same afternoon. He expected this, he said calmly. Apparently, years earlier, my grandfather had insisted that every amendment to the trust be recorded, witnessed, and stored with the original documents. When the hearing arrived, the courtroom was quiet. The judge listened as my parents' attorney argued that family should have priority. Then the trustee played one recording. My grandfather's voice filled the room. If Ethan can't use this money someday, I want it helping children who still have a chance. If anyone in this family tries to change that because they see dollar signs, they already have my answer. The recording ended. No one spoke. The judge dismissed the petition that afternoon, ruling there was no legal basis to challenge the trust. He also ordered my parents to reimburse much of the trustee's legal fees because their claim lacked evidence. A few months later, the Children's Hospital opened a new family resource center funded by Ethan's gift. Rachel and I attended the dedication quietly. Near the entrance was a small bronze plaque. It simply read, "In memory of Ethan, nothing about the amount, nothing about our family, just his name." Emily eventually got married. The wedding was much smaller than originally planned. I wasn't invited, and I didn't expect to be. Almost a year after Ethan's funeral, Dad called. "We've all been through a lot," he said. "Maybe it's time we put the past behind us." I asked him one question. "Have you and Mom ever visited the hospital?" There was a long silence. "No," he admitted. I figured. I wished him well and ended the call. Every spring, the hospital sends Rachel and me a letter explaining how Ethan's gift has helped families stay close to their children during long hospital stays, covered emergency assistance, and funded counseling for grieving parents. I read every letter.